Hey everyone, in today's video we'll be making this tiered white linen dress. So to start, take your front block and move the dart into the waist, then add another dart perpendicular to center front. Then we're going to shorten the darts by 3/4 of an inch and then create a circle. My radius was 2.5 inches, but you can add or subtract depending on your own size. Just try to match the proportions in the video. Take the side in 1/2 inch at the top and then 1/2 inch to 0 degrees on the bottom, and then you're going to add 3/8 of an inch to the center front horizontal line. Add 7/8 of an inch to the middle line of the circle, then draw in the curves and lines as shown. You're going to cut away the excess as shown and then fold and tape the pieces that I tape in the video. Trace the pieces on a harder paper, smoothing any bumps and adding 1/2 inch seam allowance on each. Measure the side of the bottom side panel and the sides of the cups and use this measurement for the back panel's height. Trace the rest of the back block, then fold and tape the dart, angle it down towards center back for the look here. Pin the bottom panel's right sides together and repeat to the lining. Then pin the cups right sides together and again repeat on the lining. Pin the lining and self wrong sides together along the top, then sew on top at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Pin the lining and self cups right sides together and sew along the top at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Pin the cups right sides to the bodice panels and sew at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now pin and sew all the back self panels to their linings, sewing just along the top at 1/2 inch seam allowance. buttonholes to the front and sew them together. Cut a 1.5 inch by 40 inch strip for the tie. You can adjust the size based on how long you want it, then sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Turn the straps inside out and sew the ends down and closed. Pin the middle of the tie to the middle of the bodice and sew. I cut out a circle skirt out of the self and lining fabrics using a calculator, and I'll link that down below. And here we're just cutting down one side to open the center back. Pin the self to the lining wrong sides together and sew on top at a 1/4 inch. So I cut another 2.5 inches by whatever length works for you and sew it at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Turn the straps inside out, then pin to the bodice. Sew the straps onto the dress, lift the foot and spin the dress around instead of backtracking. It just makes it smoother. Pin the bodice to the skirt and sew at 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I ended up cutting around 8 meters of 11-inch wide fabric strips for the bottom tier. You're going to sew along the top with a long stitch to gather. Gather the bottom tier to match the top skirt tier. This took forever. Pin the bottom tier to the top right sides together. We're going to pin the center back right sides together. Mark where the zipper will end with a different colored pin. Sew the center back closed at 1/2 inch seam allowance using a long stitch from top to the zipper marking, then continue with a normal stitch length. Pin the zipper to the seam allowance and sew it down only to the seam allowance with a zipper foot. And sew around the outside of the zipper using the zipper foot. So you're going to seam rip to expose the zipper, just do this carefully. And then sew or serge the eyelet trim to the bottom tier. And to finish the trim, leave some excess, sew it together, and sew right sides together down the rest. And that's all. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. See you in the next video.